want to live like this anymore. I don't want to live with the, being isolated and depressed and just grieving this old life. I don't want to live like this anymore. And it was like butterflies just lifted away and I just saw the world in a different way.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I was like, far out. I've just accepted everything. And I'd reached that the grief stage, that it goes in stages, and I'd reached acceptance. And I was like, wow, that's bloody unbelievable. And I did it all myself.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gasiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Hello and welcome to Recovery After Stroke, a podcast full of answers, advice and practical tools for stroke survivors to help you take back your life after a stroke and build a stronger future. I'm your host, three-time stroke survivor, Bill Gasiamis, and after my life was turned upside down and I went from being an active father to being stuck in hospital, I knew if I wanted to get back to the life I loved, my recovery was up to me. After years of researching and discovering, I learned how to heal my brain and rebuild a healthier and happier life than I ever dreamed possible. And now I've made it my mission to empower other stroke survivors like you to recover faster, achieve your goals, and take back the freedom you deserve. Now, if you enjoy this episode and want more resources, accessible training, and hands-on support, check out my Recovery After Stroke Coaching membership. Created especially for stroke survivors, this is your clear pathway to transform your symptoms, reduce anxiety, and navigate your journey to recovery with confidence. Head to recoveryafterstroke.com to find out more after this podcast. But for now, let's dive in to today's episode. This is episode 145, and my guest today is Kate Ryan, who experienced a stroke at the young age of 10 and has lived with the inability to use one of her arms since that day. Kate has overcome a lot in the last 34 years, and some of the lessons she learned ended up in her first book, Beyond Stroke, Living Independently with One Arm. Kate Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Tell me a little bit about what happened to you, Kate.
So my stroke happened on June the 9th. So it's coming up to my anniversary, June the 9th, 1987. Where out of the clear blue sky, I was 10 years old and I'd been at school during the day, and that afternoon at about 3:30, I sort of had a headache, and it was quite a bad headache, more than usual. And I said to my mother, because I was only young, I said, Mum, I've got a really bad headache. And she must have noticed something that was unusual. And she said, well, just stay home, because I was on my way to a ballet class. And she said, just stay home from ballet tonight. And I said, no, I really want to go. I was a very driven child and like to achieve a lot of things. And I said, no, I'm going to go. So went to the ballet class, which was only 10, 20 minutes away. And the headache just got progressively worse, and was only 5 minutes into the class, and we were doing neck exercises, and I was like, I've got this headache, I'm going to try extra hard today. And I went over really, really far on the right side, and I'm not sure if that had something to do with it or not, but straight away, we were doing floor exercises after the neck exercises, and the teacher said, are you okay, Kate? Do you want to get a drink? And I said, I presume I said yes. And I went up, and from then I went up to get a drink, and the next moment I found myself in the chairs at the front of the ballet class. From then from then I was fitting. I was fitting because
Having
my
a seizure.
no, I wasn't having a seizure. The oxygen wasn't getting. I found out later that the oxygen and wasn't getting to my brain, so the blood wasn't going through to my brain, and the right side of my body was jumping up and down, and there was a secondary ballet teacher, and she was actually holding my body down, and it was the absolute worst thing she could have done. So in these times, they didn't ring an ambulance, and they didn't ring my mum. This is before mobile phones, which is crazy when you think about it, because with a stroke, the time is it can make such a difference. And they didn't think, a 10-year-old girl was having a stroke. So, so I laid on these chairs and was just in absolute agony. I described it to my doctors and to friends and family as an axe, just going in and out through it just felt like an axe was going in and out of my brain. After about an hour and a half, they didn't call an ambulance, but one of the little girls in the class knew the home phone number, and they called my mum, and mum just came straight to, and I just remember just her going so fast, went to the hospital, and local hospital, was taken by ambulance to Prince of Wales, which is now called Sydney Children's Hospital, and I'd had a stroke. So I had lots of awful, very, very painful tests where they injected hot dye into the blood supply to see what happened to my brain, and so I'd had a stroke and a hemiplegic stroke to the right side of my brain, affecting the full left side of my body, which included my face, actual part of the body, everything, and completely paralyzed. So pretty terrifying and heartbreaking thing to happen to a child.
How old are you now?
I've just turned 44. Embarrassingly so.
Embarrassing to say. I'm older than you, so don't worry about it too much. But you talk about it so vividly. You talk about it if it's still fresh. Is it fresh?
Absolutely. I think about it every day. I remind my children how lucky, my daughter was complaining about her wobbly tooth, and I was telling her how lucky she is to have healthy teeth, and I think about it all the time. I think about all the memories I have of my childhood, of, being a ballet dancer or having fun on my bike, riding to my friend's house, and they're all the things that I wasn't able to and have never been able to do ever again. So the left side of my body, I lost my balance. So I remind myself that I have kept those memories alive, because if they fade away, that would be awful to me. So they're very vivid, and I like to keep those memories alive. And it was such a like giving birth, for example. I'll never forget the moment that I gave birth to each of my 3 children. I can remember those times vividly. I still remember lying on the table when I was having my not the MRI, the CAT scan. I remember the feeling of it going through and feeling like I was going to fall off the table because I couldn't feel one side of my body. And I remember, them saying, don't move, Kate. And I was lying, and I remember feeling angry when they were saying, don't move. And I was lying as still as I can remember I was lying as still as I could. I can remember the feelings and of course the pain of it. So yes, certainly I've kept those alive for some reason.
Is the memory distant, or is it still fresh in that? Are you re-experiencing that? Are you traumatized by that and therefore you re-experiencing the trauma? Or is it just a situation that you remember and you have a vivid memory of that situation? So basically, I'm just trying to see if there's a separation now of time between 10 and 44, 34 years have passed. Is it in the distance in the past, or is it still in the current time?
Yeah, it's in the past now. For it's in the past, and I've sort of separated the pain
Yeah.
now. I've gotten past that. I've gotten past the anger and the frustration and the grief of it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, certainly that's taken a very long time to get there.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I contacted you because I saw the post that you did with one of your daughters about some of the challenges that you're experiencing, and some of the problems that you have using just one of your arms because the other one isn't able to be used to do up shirts and to do all that kind of stuff. Tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about the thinking behind that post on Instagram. What's the purpose of you sharing a post where you're chatting with your daughter about how you go about buttoning up your shirt or putting on an
Oh,
item of
okay.
clothing?
Yeah. So, being a childhood survivor of a stroke, it's probably different to these days. But back in my day, there really wasn't any help, and I just had to learn how to do everything again, very, very, very quickly. And I had to learn how to do things with one hand, and I just had to pick it up, like doing buttons up with one hand, or how to make toast with one hand. And I found that as I was getting older, I found out that speaking to other stroke survivors, especially older people, they were just unable to do these activities. And I had a wealth of knowledge in my mind that I thought, wow, all these people could benefit from the things I know. There are so many, even little things like I lived in a house that had double door handles, and I worked out I couldn't get out of the house for the first couple of months until I learned how to do double door handles, which for anyone who is struggling, it's you hold the bottom one and you turn that, and then you turn the top handle with the upper part of your forearm. So I learned how to do that one, and just so many things. So I just started, now that there's so much social media and opportunity to tell people, I thought, what a great way to present it in an entertaining format, or in educational format. My daughter's been helping me make them fun, and we did that one on how to do up buttons with one hand, because once you know how to do it, it's quite simple. Really, we don't need to use all little fancy tools or Velcro tops, things like that. Once you know a quick little knack, you can live just like anybody else. So that's why.
That's important. You've got no choice really. At 10, you need to be a problem solver, don't you? You just need to find ways to solve all these problems, and it doesn't seem to me that a 10-year-old really gets caught up in the problem. They get caught up in the solution. Would you say that's accurate? Is that how you would describe your path towards overcoming the challenges that you would face as a young kid, especially before the stroke, you were able to operate as most people and use both arms?
Yeah. Well, I was like I said, I was an extremely driven person and still am. But never came into my mind that I would, have had a stroke, or of not being able to do things with two hands. But I just found that the occupational therapy, in fact, it wasn't very helpful to me. And my, a child's brain can adapt very quickly, and that's why we go to school when we're young, because we have the ability to learn new skills really quickly. So, if I was trying to get on for a little while, I couldn't get upstairs. So I had to learn how to get upstairs by myself, because there was nobody there to show me how to. I couldn't wait until Monday when my occupational therapy class was. There were 20 other school children trying to get up the stairs, pushing me out of the way. So I had to learn a way. how to do it. So it was just a matter of adapting so that I didn't get left behind. So whereas an adult could might have certain adjustments, they could stay at home or they could have time off work, and certainly I was really angry and depressed and frustrated and all those things, just like anybody else. But at the same time, I had my brain was forming new patterns quickly and in a different way. So yeah.
What was it like being at school and going through the teenage years with the challenges that you faced? Did you feel left out? Did you feel isolated? Was any of that an issue, or did you just blend in and were one of the regular kids?
Yeah. No, I didn't feel left out or isolated. I was pretty lucky in that way. But I did feel misunderstood. People just didn't understand and didn't care, and I went to an all girls school, and some of the girls were really, really hurtful and I also developed epilepsy as a result of the brain injury. And, they told me that I was putting the seizure on or making it up or leaving school early. And, I had lots of tears and lots of hurt feelings. I mean, it was pretty awful, the things that they said. But I never really felt alone. The only times that I was feeling alone was in the initial stages when I had my stroke when I was in year 5 at school. It was in those early stages where I found it hard to play with other children. So that was when everyone played and did skipping or whatever they did, and I wasn't able to do that, and I didn't feel that I could bond with my old friends because I couldn't do those playing activities, and a lot of my old friends did actually didn't want to be around me and couldn't relate to me anymore because I looked different or that sort of thing. But it was a lot tougher as I was in my high school years.
High school kids can be so cruel.
Yeah.
I know what a little idiot I was when I was at school and how cruel I could have been to other people for all sorts of reasons. And I didn't think twice about it. Like, you just misbehave and you just treat people badly, and you wouldn't even think about the impact that you're having on them. Nobody ever really stopped to say to you, this is the impact that you're having on me. And even if they did, I don't think I would have taken it seriously. I don't think I would have listened. So I wouldn't have considered myself a terrible person. But in my group, when, the other group of, kids was giving us a hard time, we would just give it back just as hard, and if not harder. Everyone would try to outdo themselves as to how terrible you can be to each other. So I can imagine when you're a teenager and you're not thinking about the feelings of the other person, I can imagine how they might mistreat somebody who's doing it tough and who's an easy
Yeah.
victim. They may have seen you as an easy victim, and therefore some kids would go after that because they get an easy win, some kind of an easy ego boost or something like that. Did you ever bring that up with your parents and raise it with teachers, or is it just something that you dealt with? And
I think as part of the times that it was, I tried raising it with the school counsellor, but she definitely wasn't helpful at all. She used to say to me, you need to see the glass as half full, not half. And it's just like, are you serious? Look at the situation. And I was struggling. She'd help me with my reading or something, and I'd say, and I was struggling at home as well. My family certainly didn't always understand, about what I was going through, which is I hear is a common scenario with a lot of families after they have a stroke, after the person has a stroke.
Yeah.
To receive advice like that, and I would often get upset with my friends, but really didn't get any support from anybody. But I think that might be a part of the times. I've noticed that just looking back at my school, they've changed a lot, and that might be a part of the times. At high school I was at high school in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So no, and from my family, not a lot of support. I think they were struggling with their own difficulties in accepting how much I'd changed, and their own problems within marriage and being the older brother of someone who'd had a stroke.
Yes. Did you have siblings?
Yeah, I had an older brother.
Yep. Did he treat you differently, or did he treat you the same, give you a hard time, push you around?
No, yeah, very differently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to hear what happened and how people react and respond, because every stroke's different, every person is different, every family unit is different, and I think that's what makes it difficult for stroke survivors is they don't seem to have a regular cookie cutter thing. I fit into this and this and this and this and that. Yep. And I can relate to all of that. And it's not a great experience that I'm experiencing, but at least I know what I'm going through is similar to somebody else or the same as somebody else. And part of what we get in the community that we're on Instagram, and the conversations that we have online, is we get people from time to time finding some similarity in what happened to them to what happened to somebody else, and they go, oh, okay, it wasn't just me. And I'm not sure how, but that makes it better. That seemed to make it better that you're not in it alone.
Yeah.
Did you have anyone else that was similar to you when you were growing up that you could relate to?
No, there was absolutely nobody, and there was absolutely nothing, absolutely no one for me to relate to, and absolutely nothing. There was no social media, because people have to remember, I had a stroke in the 1980s, and there was no mobile phones, there was no internet, there was no social media, there was only the yellow pages and the white pages. I used to go to adult physiotherapy and adult rehabilitation centres. And when they said, I think in the 2000s, late 2000s, they said, oh, there's a stroke group in about an hour away, an adult stroke group. And I'm not going to an adult. I was in my early 20s and interested in going to nightclubs and things like that. And I said, I am not doing that. And I was forming an identity finally. And there was absolutely nothing for me. So the people that are having strokes now really have it lucky, to be quite honest. And there was such little understanding about strokes back then. I had no friends who understood. There was absolutely nothing. When the internet first started coming about, I was looking online for people that had strokes as kids and stuff like that, and there was like a little bit in America, but I couldn't contact them. It was really just so isolating and so alone. And also I had epilepsy, and I was stuck at home a lot because of having seizures and also the side effects of the medication. It was extremely isolating and heartbreaking and confusing, and that was probably the worst part of everything, was the isolation. So it's far, far worse than what people experience today.
I can't imagine, even in 2012 when I had the first bleed in my head, and then in the subsequent years there was nothing, because it seems like it wasn't that long ago, but it may as well have been 20 million years ago, because in 2012 Instagram wasn't booming. There wasn't a lot of people online. Podcasts were up and running, but there wasn't a lot of conversation on podcasts around these types of topics. And if they were, they weren't specifically around stroke. So when I did my podcast, there was nobody else talking about this online at all. And getting
Yeah.
people onto the podcast was really difficult. It was so hard to find people to talk to. And then I started to get really serious about it maybe about 3 years ago. And I started to notice a big turn, a big wave of people actually reaching out to be on my podcast, which wasn't ever happening before. There wasn't really something like that. Now, I know that other people have had podcasts on different topics for many more years before me, but there just wasn't that much about stroke. And at the moment, there may be 3 or 4 other podcasts on stroke, and that's about it. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's people that talk about neurological challenges, and there's people that talk about overcoming, brain injuries and all that type of thing. But there's just not specific stuff around these topics. Now, maybe it's because stroke is one of those things that messes with people's brains, and it's harder for people to put stuff like that together. I don't know. And fatigue obviously causes a lot of issues. And for me, it was really difficult to overcome all the challenges of fatigue and all that kind of stuff. So I think stroke survivors kind of have to work a lot harder to get to the point of quote unquote being in a normal world. And I used to find myself getting myself fatigued just trying to get through a regular day, because to get through that regular day, I had to really overcome a lot of challenges, a lot of stuff that was going on in my head and in my body. So that lack of energy, the fact that we get so diverted away from our tasks, and the fact that we get so diverted away from our energy gets drawn to different places, it doesn't surprise me that there's not more going on. But what I love about it is there's enough going on so that people who are, so that unfortunately, if 10-year-olds have a stroke these days, at least their parents can come online and they can find
Yeah.
a group of people and go, hey, this just happened to my daughter, which I get all
Yeah.
the time. And what can I do? Just one of my posts that I put up recently, somebody asked about their 4-year-old daughter doesn't allow mum and dad to touch one of her sides. I think it's her right hand or something
Oh,
like that. And it's
oh,
because it hurts. And that's exactly what happens to me. My wife still forgets, and she goes to touch my left hand, and I'll pull it away because it hurts when she does it. When I touch my own hand, it doesn't hurt.
oh.
And when I use my hand to pick up a tea or a coffee or anything like that, it's all good, but you can't touch my hand.
Oh, all right.
It's really annoying, right? The skin is really
Sensitive.
impacted. What's great is that mum has probably had that in her head for ages, and by going online and finding a community, she asked the question and got an answer immediately. And that
Yeah.
was amazing that I could do that for her and totally relate to it immediately. So yeah, we definitely have got it a lot better than we had. And that's a blessing in the whole situation, isn't it? Don't you think that
Yeah.
that's a great little blessing? And I do thank technology for my ability to have this format, because I honestly don't know what kind of person I would be if I didn't have this format where I could speak to stroke survivors from around the world. And I've spoken to more than 145 at this stage.
Mm,
I don't know what I would have done if I couldn't have done it. And if I
mm.
couldn't have reached out to you and have you on my podcast today, I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't have any of that. Yeah, that would have been a blessing because, just to have known one other person that had had a stroke as a kid would have been one thing that I used to do when I was young was I used to look everywhere. I just used to look everywhere for someone that had had a stroke, like someone under like 15.
Yep.
And once I found one who was like 15 or something, and that was just something. And I spoke to him and I said, "When did you have your stroke?" But and I was like 18 by then. But it took me 8 years to I used to just so I could, and I went up and spoke to him. He was on a train, but yeah, it was really, really, really hard for me being so isolated and having no support and no idea of, you know, of anything. Like I can't even imagine what having what having a stroke would have been like if I'd had some kind of support, because there was no counselling, there was no social work, there was nothing as a child. They didn't even come. If they did come to me in the hospital, I certainly don't remember any impact that it made within my hospital stay. Yeah, there was no counselling, nothing.
It sounds like
So,
a million years ago. It sounds like you're talking about, the 1500s. It's so
yeah,
ridiculous that it's only been 34 years. That's not a bloody long time. And
yeah,
that we were lacking all that support.
yeah,
All I can say is I'm grateful for the support that people get nowadays, and it's
yeah,
improving and it's getting better. And even still, it's
yeah,
not enough. And people tell me often that they don't have enough support. And I get it, because how much support people needs is different compared, for every person, because every person's stroke is unique and every person's needs are unique. That
yeah.
being said, are you then relieved? Are you online and going, oh my God, I can relate to that person. Oh my gosh, this is
No,
unique. Does
no,
that happen to you or not?
no, it doesn't, because I don't spend a lot of time online
Yeah.
because um so because um I was forced to work on my own recovery, because I
Wow.
found that I just went into the I've talked in some of my speaking engagements, I've talked about this, how I just went into the depths of despair. I went down into depression. Like I said, I was so angry. It was constantly, why me? Why me? I was so angry at the world. I was looking for somebody to blame, something, anything to blame. So frustrated, not being able to do anything, my sports, my ballet. I was playing musical instruments, all that sort of thing. And I just wanted my old life back. So I was kind of forced to do everything myself, and I was all by myself doing it. And I found that I progressed through a kind of recovery in my grief, and when I got into it, so that was all sort of through my teen years, and with no support whatsoever. I just plodded away at this, and then and then in my early 20s, I still being really depressed and that sort of thing. I started sort of playing with the idea of I've got to, I'm going to have to start moving on with my life. But how am I going to do that? And I don't want to move on. And what am I going to do now? And I started playing with my identity and I want my old life back. And how am I going to do that? How am I going to get my own life back? And then in my 30s, I had my 3 children pretty close together, and I had twins. So it was
Lovely.
I had 2 at once.
Lovely and cruel at the same time.
Yeah, it's a package deal, I'd
Yeah.
say. And I had my daughter as well. So, and shortly after that, a couple of years later, I was just sitting in my car, and after speaking to someone on the phone, and I was just like, I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to live with the, being isolated and depressed and just grieving this old life. I don't want to live like this anymore. And it was like butterflies just lifted away, and I just saw the world in a different way.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I was like, far out. I've just accepted everything, and I'd reached that the grief stage, that it goes in stages, and I'd reached acceptance, and I was like, wow, that's bloody unbelievable, and I did it all myself. So
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
when I go back online and people talk about, where they're at, I'm like, I'm not there anymore. I'm not feeling angry, or I don't want to talk about certain aspects of my stroke because I don't feel that way anymore. I've passed it, and the good thing is that I got there myself, and I don't need to go there anymore. I know some people are doing like informal chats and groups on other
Yep.
like forums and groups and things, but I just don't need it because I've sort of healed within myself. And I tell you what, this acceptance stage doesn't last, like 3 weeks or something. It continues to grow.
Yeah. And
I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm healing in so many other areas, and wow, I've had a pretty awful relationship with my mother ever since I had the stroke. So as soon as I had the stroke, our relationship just took a nosedive and just became really bad. And she was just angry at me. And just in the last, about month, it's gotten really good. And I'm like, wow, where did that come from? And there's a few other things. And I'm like, that's because of the acceptance. So the acceptance stage is like such a growth stage. So I'm actually writing a book on the grief process after having a stroke,
Awesome.
or any kind of injury, in fact, because it's been such a powerful experience for me, and it's such an area of growth. But it's a process, and it's bloody worth it. But
Wow.
it's
Before we
slow.
talk about the book that you're going to write, we're going to be talking about the book you've already written. So, but
Yeah.
just before we talk about beyond stroke, living independently with one arm, before we talk about that, I want to go back a little bit to the overcoming the grief part. So, becoming fully accepting of your situation. How long ago did that happen? I missed on the timing. When did that happen?
Okay.
Roughly.
Yeah, roughly. 5 years. 5 or 6 years ago. 6 years. 6 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. It only took you 25 years to get there.
Oh no.
I mean, but you got there, right? So this is the brilliant part of it. You did it all on your own. Now, why I wanted to mention that was because imagine if you had some support and you were able to go through a different process towards fully accepting things, you may have got there sooner. So what I'm saying to the people listening and watching is that you can get to acceptance sooner with support and with counseling and with some kind of a therapy that works for you. So I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure how you'll find that, but just know that with support, it gets that timeline can shrink. And for me, I got to acceptance pretty quick. I think the one thing that I really truly needed to accept was that I might die. And once I had done that, I had that shift as well. And I was then able to see the world differently, and then other things became possible. Podcast, speaking about it, all the things that I'm doing now all became possible because of the acceptance part of it. So I didn't stay in my poor me space very, very quickly, but I was also at counseling on day 7, pretty much, or day 10 after the first bleed in my head. So I was really proactive. And before that, I was at counseling for a good number of years. I reckon I started counseling about 8 years before my stroke. And that was just something that I felt like I needed to do, because all the stuff that stroke survivors talk about, not being understood and not being able to explain what they're going through and all that, I felt like that pre-stroke. I wasn't
Mm.
able to have people understand me, or I just felt alone, like weirdly alone in the world where I had everybody around me and everything, and everything was amazing. So I went and got myself into some counseling so that I could come to terms with all the challenges and all the stuff that I was feeling. So
Mm.
you took 20 odd years, 25, 26 years to get to that point. We can shrink that time down with a bit of focus and a little bit of support. Kate, the beauty of the fact that you did it on your own, and say later on you write a book about that stage for you,
Mm.
that's what it's going to do. That book, when people read it, is going to shrink the time that it takes for others to get to your stage sooner. And that's going
That's
to be amazing to read. And I'd love to see that book,
yeah,
available. That'd be great.
yeah.
But let's talk about the book that you have already written, Beyond Stroke, Living Independently with One Arm. Have you got a copy in
I
front of
do.
you there? Can you just hold it up to the camera?
Okay. You see
Just a bit.
that?
That's it, a bit higher. Perfect. That's it. I'll make sure there's links and everything and an image of it on the
Cool.
show notes. It's awesome. How long ago did you finish that?
I finished that. Oh, 5, 2016. So
Brilliant.
about 6 years ago, 5
Yeah.
years ago.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about what people can expect to find in the book. What's it about?
So the book, in the beginning part of the book, I talk a bit about the reality of stroke, because sometimes people don't tell you exactly what's going to happen. So the doctors might say, oh, or the physios might say, this is going to happen when you leave, but it's not exactly real because they haven't been there.
Yeah.
So I talk a little bit about living with stroke, and then sort of the reality of stroke. So how the world is going to react to you having a stroke,
Wow.
and how important it is to get your independence,
Yeah.
because the carers aren't always going to be there, and your families might be frustrated with you, or, you're not always going to get the help that you need. Then I go into a series of different topics, which I'll go back to the contents of doing tasks one-handed.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, we've got things in the kitchen, personal care, opening containers, food containers specifically, like jars. You know how hard jars are to open?
With
like
two hands, sometimes they're
pasta,
impossible.
yeah, things like that. I've got like twist top lids and things like that. I'll show you how to do that with one hand. And seals on bottles. Okay, I've got around the house. Things like keeping a book still, or writing on a piece of paper,
Mm-hmm.
so the paper doesn't move. Just simple stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'll give you really simple techniques. I've got children and babies in there, all different things like swaddling a baby and doing buckles, and my boys used to squirm, so I've got some really great ideas. And lifting a large
What about changing nappies?
Changing that's all in there.
Yeah.
We've got that. Lifting large objects, so we got that in there, and just some recreation bits and pieces. So I'll show you a bit I've got here. So I've just got some ideas of zippers and
Yep.
putting on a jacket. There's putting on a jacket, me,
Yep.
and they're just really simple pictures. I haven't gone to town with fancy stuff.
Yeah.
And then what I do on the opposite page is I just put a really simple breakdown of
How?
a description which goes next to the pictures.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
And there's tons of them. I got a whole book. Here's the nappies one. So I describe about the pull-ups.
Yep.
And I talk to people about get your kids in pull-ups as soon as they can. It'll change your life.
Yep.
And there's the description which goes next to it. And yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a great idea. It's such a handy thing, and I can see that it's really easy to read. The text is quite a good size. There's not a lot of text. It's not overdone. It's just really step by step. Seems like procedural manual.
I thought because I know I had a lot of problems with reading after a stroke, so following words and text. So that's why I've kept that quite simple for anyone with reading and challenges understanding words after they've had a brain injury.
Yeah, I've
kept
the same
text
problem.
simple.
I have the same problem with reading. So books that are very spaced out and the writing is quite big, it tends to make my brain not get so tired.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that part of it.
Oh, the other thing. So it's got nice big words, nice big text on the front, not too many colours, nice big words in point form. And the other thing is it's spiral bound. So it'll sit nice.
Oh, I love it.
We thought of everything.
You sure
So
did.
you
That
won't-
is awesome. So there's no spine to worry about. It's going to fold back and it's going to be really comfortable to hold in one hand and read. And
yeah, well, you don't even need to hold it with one hand. You can just put it on the kitchen table while you cut your watermelon or whatever.
You can stand it up.
Yeah, anything, whatever you want. You don't have to hold it and then you're stuck because you've only got no arms. So we've thought of every trick.
Fantastic. That's such a great idea. And it's available online. Where do people buy it if they want to grab it?
Yeah, so it's available in two forms. So you can buy it off ryanpublishing.com.au and I'll give you the link to add for that. And that's the hard copy version. And for ebook, you can buy it off all the normal platforms like Booktopia and Amazon. So far, I'm not sure of the other ones.
Yeah.
But
and what I love about ebooks is, again, you can get it, you can print it off, and you can take it down to your local binding store, whatever they're called in Australia. It's Officeworks. I'm not sure what they're called overseas, and they can just put one of those ring binders on it for you as well, and you can use it in the same format. Does that work?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that sort of. I don't know any of that technology stuff.
All right. Well, if it does work, well, there you go. It works. If it doesn't, well, it doesn't. I don't know. I think it does, because I've done that before for some books where I've bought the PDF version and then bound it in that way, and it really makes a big difference to me as well when I'm using it. Not that I have trouble using both my arms, but it just makes a big difference when I'm using a book and I don't have to worry about destroying, the binding. I don't know. It's weird. I hate getting a brand new, perfectly crisp book and then bending it back.
Yeah, I've got some tips for that in my book as well.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Brilliant. How long did it take you to put together?
It took me about 6 months to write it, probably because I was going pretty slow, and just enjoying my freedom because the kids were at preschool and stuff like that. So I took my time, and then probably took about 2 months to take the photos. But again, I was just taking my time with that one as well. So yeah.
So you got through it, and it was Ryan Publishing was the publisher. How good was it, or easy was it to find the publisher for a book like that?
It was pretty straightforward because the publisher's actually my father.
So basically, it was you're publishing this book, mate.
No, I actually looked around for a lot of different publishers, and I kind of forgot that.
That your dad's a publisher.
Yeah, I thought, oh, I want someone young and savvy and everything. And then my dad was visiting me and the kids, and he said, "I'll do it for you and make it look great." And it's been the best thing ever. And he's in Melbourne. So
That's
for any
hilarious.
Melbs people,
That
mm,
is hilarious. I'm in Melbourne. I'm going to go and look him up. And when I go onto his website, he's got some really cool books on there, and some of them are very Australian. You've got
yeah, they're all Aussie. Yeah, most.
Beauregard of Ballarat, A Happy
Yeah,
Tale. My
yeah,
God, I can't
yeah.
believe that I've never heard of this before, but it's really amazing to see. So he was able to take you through that process where you got your book up and running within around 6 months and
Mm.
get it published. And now it's also available online. And that's really a helpful tool for people that are going through life, either because of a stroke or some other reason with not
It
being
can
able
be
to use both
anything. So,
arms.
the this book I directed at people that had a stroke because that's my experience.
Mm.
But I mean, it can be for anybody. So people with
Amputees.
amputees, we've sold a lot to the Amputee Association in Queensland. It can be someone with arthritis, MS, carpal tunnel syndrome,
Wow.
people post-surgery sports injuries. There's another condition, I've forgotten what it's called, but it affects the fingers.
Yep.
I've had a lady who had an injury to her thumb who bought my book, and it was only very minor just damage to her nerves, and I mean the list is endless.
Oh,
Broken
geez.
arms.
Yeah. Okay,
So
that's really helpful, actually.
yeah, so and that's the purpose of the videos as well. So there's um, someone who's had a brain injury which only affects their arm or their hand or something like that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's the purpose of the video, so it can reach a broader group of people rather than just people that have had a stroke. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing when you think of a solution for a problem, you always think about how it will solve your problem and in your situation, but then everyone else says, "Oh my God, oh, that can help me, and I can show that to somebody else who I know who is not a stroke survivor." And that's the beauty of it, is you do this. Really, it sort of stems from your need to solve
Mm.
your own problems, and then it's like, hey, by the way, these problems are solvable. How about I write this book and put it in a format that everyone can get to it, and
Mm.
maybe you can apply it in your life. It's brilliant.
Well, yeah, almost every single person that has heard about my business says, "I know such and such a person," or "My mother's had a stroke," or
Yep.
"I have a weak aunt." Almost every single person has said they know someone who has an injury to their arm, or
Yeah.
it's absolutely amazing. Or I know 3 people that could use this book.
How does that make you feel?
Or it makes me feel um, that I'm on the right track. Because when I was writing the book, I had a friend in my life, and I said, "I don't know if anybody's going to read this," and I sort of and and the only way of keeping me going was having friends in my life just to bounce ideas off and say, just give me the confidence to keep going and say, okay, just do one bit as much as I can, with just the idea that maybe one person would buy it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I have 500 people buy it, and 2 more people buy it, and 30 more people buy it, and it's just great that it is changing people's lives. I wrote the book because I had a lady who was working with us, and she was saying how much her husband would benefit from the book, and she said it really needs to be this kind of resource really needs to be out there for people. And I was like, if this one lady is saying how much it's needed, he'd had a stroke. or that it's got to be needed. It needs to be needed for other people. And my mother's actually a physiotherapist, and she was originally the person who said to me about 15 years ago that this book, she actually said to me about 15 years ago, she said, I can't undo this jam jar. Can you do it, Kate? And I just went bang, bang with a knife. That's how you do it. You open it turn it upside down and use a knife to flip the lid open. And she said, if you put that in a book, it would sell. And I just kept that in my brain for 15 years. And she was right. And this lady that was working with us was right as well. So, yeah.
Absolutely. The doubt.
Yeah.
Doubt's a bigger killer of ideas than anything, really. I mean, that fear that we have to overcome. I almost didn't do the podcast. I started it and then, stopped it and then didn't commit to it. And that because I was doubtful that people listen to it, I thought I was going to get judged and given a hard time and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, what an idiot. Looking back now, what it was just me being afraid to put myself out there. I'd never really done it before, and I was afraid to have to respond to people if they decided to be negative. I was afraid that would happen, and then what would I do? Like, how would I overcome that when all I'm trying to do is something good? So I almost didn't do it, but I also couldn't bear the thought of not doing it because I used to get messages from people going, that was a really helpful episode, or I still do every day. And that just makes it impossible for me not to do this podcast. So forget about the doubt, overcome your fears, and just push through. Anybody listening who's had an idea to do something, just do it anyway. And then put it out there, and don't worry too much about what you think people will say or do, because you're probably wrong. They're probably going to do the opposite.
I think that was my biggest barrier as well. I was thinking, people will say, the pictures are bad, this is stupid, this book. And I haven't had one single negative comment. They've all been positive. It really amazed me, actually. It's been a blessing.
Yeah, well done. Good on you. And I just had a thought. Do you reckon your mum has also got to that point of acceptance, and that's why you guys have had a good turn in the relationship?
Possibly. I'm not sure. I think I'm not sure.
Yeah,
maybe.
I'll just put it out there. You don't have to have an answer for that. It's just something that popped up into my head. And I'm thinking about parents, how little resources you had as a child who was going through that. Imagine the lack of any support or help that they also didn't have. And they did the best they could with the resources that they had available to them. And that was still woefully short of actual any real true support. And then your mum was angry at you, thinking maybe, I'm not sure that she was angry at her daughter for being unwell, but she was probably angry at the situation, just like a lot of people experience anger in their own challenge. And she wouldn't have had any idea, any clue how to actually deal with that whole situation. And imagine that being a parent, because I'm a parent, and imagine that. I mean, you just don't want to even go down that path. So
the whole family, even friends, didn't know how to. Exactly. It's kind of a what's the word? It's sort of is that a word? Self-combusts, like and like an oven, which
there's a lot of pressure, a lot of stuff going on, and it just bursts, and that's it. That people aren't coping, and then they can't manage.
People turn to alcohol and turn to all the other things, like hurtful feelings, remarks, that sort of thing, abuse. Not that we really had that, but because they can't cope with the reality of what's happening.
It's emotional, all of it. is emotional and it plays out in these other weird, strange ways. And if you're drinking and if you're taking drugs, or if you're playing out these things in a hurtful way, I mean, you're just trying to mask or process or deal with emotions that haven't been dealt with, really.
Mm.
And that's why I keep sort of going back to the counseling part, and why it's important for people to look for solutions to things like anger and try and decrease the amount of time that they stay angry. Because just similarly to what you said, there's a lot of time that's kind of wasted in that space. Like if you're sitting there being angry and cranky and all that kind of stuff, you're not really able to see what else is possible. Just like it lifted for you when you had acceptance, you saw
Mm.
all this stuff. So
Mm.
I think what I'm just trying to get at is encourage people to look for solutions rather than stay in the problem. The solution is really going to
Mm.
set them free, isn't it?
Well, I think the solution is just to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And and I also found that rather than trying to force their recovery,
Mm.
I found that I didn't have to do much. It I didn't have to try and get better. I didn't have to try and heal myself. I didn't have to try and a lot of people think I noticed on some social media groups, they're what are they saying? They're saying things like, "Oh, um, don't stop. I can pick myself up." But my opinion is actually, yes, stop. Have a break. If you're feeling down, because they're sort of saying, if I'm feeling sad, I've got to pick myself up straight away,
Yeah.
and I've always got to be try to like work on my recovery. But I'm like, no, give yourself a break. That's my personal opinion, because that's what I did.
That's also
And that's
working on your recovery, giving yourself a break and doing
break.
nothing.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
It didn't mean that I stopped doing physiotherapy, or because I've done physiotherapy the whole way since having my stroke up until basically when I had my kids, or when I had my twins. Since having the twin boys, I haven't really had a lot of time
for yourself ever before, ever again.
But like a lot of people are saying, "On no time for a break. Gotta keep moving, keep doing the recovery." But I'm like, just give yourself a break, and that's when the healing occurs. And I found that getting through that depression, anger stage, sort of, it happened by me really not doing much and just.
But that's the counterintuitive part of it. It's look for the solution. That doesn't mean the solution is to do more or be more or fix more. It's sometimes the solution is do less, be less active, be less out in the public, be less. Sometimes that's the solution. So it's exactly what you're saying. It's counterintuitive. It's not always what you think it is. It might be something that you didn't expect. So give everything a try. And I think every feeling is valid, right? Every feeling is necessary to experience and go through. The upset, the anger, the crankiness, the depression, and this. Some of them are not pleasant, but they are valid. They need to be experienced and expressed, and then kind of given the attention that they are suggesting that they need from you. So once you allow yourself to have those feelings and express them and feel them, for all they're good or all they're bad, that's what the purpose of them is for.
Like if you feel like eating a packet of Tim Tams and crying and getting into bed, just bloody well do it. Don't go out and exercise for like go around the block or catching up with friends for dinner. Like if you have to take care of yourself because you have grief coming up, do it. Go to bed, have a packet of Tim Tams and watch some Netflix, or cry because you feel like crying.
But don't do the Tim Tams a lot. Not a lot, because You'll
Yeah,
put on a
maybe
heap of
not
weight.
always. Maybe not always the
But
Tim
once
Tam.
in a blue moon, yeah, eat a whole pack of Tim Tams if you have to. Yeah.
But you know what I mean.
I
Like
do. I
it's
do.
about caring for
For
yourself,
yourself as well.
and because we're so much in a society now where we got to look good, we've got to have the great photos for Facebook, and if you look at my photos, I rarely post on Facebook. I might post a couple of my kids doing something great. I'm most of the time just caring for myself because I know what that amazing stuff that has achieved for me. So yeah, I really encourage anybody that's listening to I don't know if counselors are saying that to do this and that, but it's not about, like, the process after having a stroke is not about getting up and doing more exercise or trying to heal. It's just about taking care of yourself one day at a time.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, on that note, I think we might end it here. Thank you so
Mhm.
much for being my guest on the podcast. Thank you so much for the book that you've written.
Yep.
I'm going to have the show notes for everybody with the links so that people can find that and get a copy if they need to. I'm looking
Mhm.
forward to the next book. Make sure you let me know when it's done so that I can get
Yes.
you on and we can talk about that.
Yep.
And good luck on your recovery, on your ongoing recovery, and well done on getting through that barrier and finding acceptance.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bill. And yeah, maybe speak again soon.
Thanks so much for joining me on today's Recovery After Stroke podcast. Do you ever wish there was just one place you could go to for resources, advice, and support in your stroke recovery? Whether you've been navigating your journey for weeks, months, or years, I know firsthand how difficult it can be to get the answers you need. This road is both physically and mentally challenging, from reclaiming your independence to getting back to work to rebuilding your confidence and more. Your symptoms don't follow a rule book. As soon as you leave the hospital, you no longer have medical professionals on tap. I know for me, it felt as if I was teaching myself a new language from scratch with no native speaker in sight. If this sounds like you, I'm here to tell you you're not alone. And there is a better way to navigate your recovery and build a fulfilling life that you love. I've created an inclusive, supportive, and accessible membership called Recovery After Stroke. This all in one support and resource program is designed to help you take your health into your own hands. This is your guidebook through every step in your journey, from reducing fatigue to strengthening your brain health to overcoming anxiety and more. To find out more and to join the community, just head to recoveryafterstroke.com. See you next time.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.